All right. Well, we're going to go on and get started. Oh, sorry for the interesting start. Today we have Orchid Pusey, and she is from Asian Women's Shelters. She is the executive director. She is a phenomenal ally and comrade in this work. And I love her profusely. She always steps in, shows up, shows out, and lays truth bare, which is one of the things that I genuinely appreciate about having her with us. I know some of you were here a couple of months ago when we heard from Asian Shelter's founder. Today we're going to have a different type of discussion with Orchid because this is one of her passion areas when talking about reproductive justice. And she's going to give us some updates on what's happening over at Asian Women's Shelter and really just speak from her heart. We are all going to be witness to some greatness. So I'm excited to have you here today, and I will go on and turn it over to you.
My gracious goodness. Hi everyone, I'm Orchid. That's the short version. I am thrilled to be here and to just be able to have some conversation about It's True, a topic that is really important to me, which is all of us getting more confident, all of us getting more confident inside ourselves and then externally, with our own language and our own framing of how to address when culture is used as a defense for violence, almost always used as a defense for violence against children, against women, or against gender nonconforming people, regardless of how they see themselves. So I have some slides, and I'm hoping that we can it's not very many of us, so we can use the chat box. If you're comfortable jumping in the chat box, do it. If you want to unmute and jump in, do it. If you want to do both, like first you're comfortable with the chat and then you want to elaborate on it, do it. We can be really flexible. So I'll share screen, and I'm just going to jump back and forth between this view and the screen view because I don't like to be not to see each other for like a long chunk of time. So I'm going to go through some stuff really quickly because I assume it's review to get to the heart of it, which is like, how do we deal with when people use cultural differences, when they weaponize them within abuse? And then when it shows up as a defense in systems, when they're actually having to be in court or having to be somewhere else, public. So here we go. Okay. So here we go. Culture, control. Also, I hope that we can talk about culture and justifications of violence in the context of the new coercive control bill, because I think we'll see even more of culture used as a defense to say it's totally normal who controls what, who has passwords to what, who, has what freedom and who doesn't. So I thought I'm going to start with just super quick, just a little scan because our census happened and there's some new data, just so we get grounded in where we are in our state. Because our census got extended from 2020 to 2021, and then some of the new kind of infographics and everything are coming out still. So here's just a quick look at resident populations in California by race and ethnicity. I'm not going to read them all. We can just get a scan. The idea is a scan, not anything deeper. A couple quick additional points. Upper one about Black Americans in California and how it's so tricky because our state is so big. So on the one hand, it's still true. This was true in the 2010 census too, that California's population of Black community is larger than that of all but 5 other states, like really big. But because the state is so geographically big, it doesn't mean that there's concentrations of representation or, adequate representation, of course, across the state. Because within California, it's not a big percentage just because of how gigantic we are. Other quick little data point is AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander, increased 25% from 2010. And the growth is highest in our area, just something to note. And that really the biggest issues around access are not about in AAPI context is not so much about AAPI as an umbrella heading, but about the stuff underneath that. Because if you speak English or you don't, that's the huge defining characteristic, not that you are or are not Asian. It's, did you come here on a plane? Did you come here in the hold of a boat? Have you had access to education anyway, you get the idea. There's unbelievable diversity under the AAPI heading, which is part of what makes it tricky. And part of why California is going to start to ask for disaggregated data, because the diversity under the umbrella is too broad to get anything meaningful from the umbrella. Foreign born, this is not a big change, 26.6%. We're still in our state, 1 out of 50 states, but we have over 25% of the country's foreign born. And this isn't new. This is not like, ooh, some big influx in the 2000s or something. California was built on this. Our railroad was built on this, our everything. So this is not a new phenomenon for our state at all. And we have lots of little hotspot communities, largest Armenian population in the US, highest Mian population outside of Laos or China, highest Cambodian population outside of Cambodia. There's some big centers of people who have been resettled in California, many, resettled after supporting the US in wars, whether that's Vietnam War, Iraqi wars, wars in Afghanistan, etc. All right, we know we have tons of language diversity, 220 languages, over half of those are indigenous and half are not. This 2021 Census Bureau did its first nationwide surveys about sexual orientation and gender identity. So that's new too, just more of a cultural scan of California. So of course we have, not surprisingly, our share of adults who identify as LGBT is higher than the rest of the country. Texas is second, but we know, given all the legal upheaval that's going on right now, their second population count doesn't necessarily correlate to safety or support. Texas is a prime example. I don't even have to say sorry to anybody here who's from Texas, because anybody who's here from Texas has actually lived it and isn't like me just talking about it. Okay, where is my cursor? And then just across racial categories, we're really evenly spread. So when you look at the all California adults, the colors are, Latinx, white, Asian, Black, others. Other at this point with census, it includes Arabs, it includes indigenous, it includes tons of people that don't get disaggregated and counted. But in terms of LGBT identity, when people have privacy to report on their own paper, this is what we get. For education in general, we can see in every single category, men are having more education than women. That's our blue and pink. And then when you look at all, if you look at all, when you put everybody together, it's still more than women, just notable. And then when you look at our education, red is high school. So across all of our racial groups, like public high school, if you were ever to support public education, here's our graph that tells us, when it's public high school, we do much better, we don't have huge gaps. But then when you look at bachelor's degree, which is the green, you get big gaps. And this is another instance of where the Asian one is we need the disaggregated data, because under Asian, we have the highest attainment and the lowest for bachelor's, both under the same category. That's part of why splitting it up to be able to support some of the communities who are in extreme poverty as opposed to those that have some of the highest incomes in the state, separating that out is really important. Then that's it. So that's our quick scan. Any comments about our quick, no longer using 2010 data to look at our state section before we move on? Okay. We'll keep going. This section is just total review because I know that we all know this, but I get to talk about this a lot. And so I just thought I'd sum it up so that you can see what I'm saying in other places. And sorry, this is just to say we're not going to use some outdated, unhelpful definition of culture. So what I'm working off of is a description, a use of talking about culture that's reflected by this slide. And I picked actual people that I personally know, like every single one of these people, I either personally know or have heard of. Like I don't know director Zhang Yimou, but I kind of wish I did. And I don't know the Chinese father who's in detention waiting to be, there's a couple people that I don't actually know, but almost everybody is someone that I know, just so that we know this is not like random, it's life. So just take a quick scan. And then use the chat box or jump in and just use your own words of like, what is the point of this slide? Why do I share it with people, including judges and people that work in the ER and our own community members? Why? And it's just us, so you don't have to use whole sentences. I don't care. Whatever language you want. It seems that we are spite similar. Okay. I was like, spite. There's a lost a word. High diversity of needs and ability to access existing programs easily. Basically, you can look at those and it's like, do those people all have the same norms of life? No. Do they all, like, is what you see on the outside really going to tell you everything about what somebody thinks is normal within the family, what kinds of control someone thinks is totally normal versus abnormal? There are different life struggles totally within people of the same race. There's, yep, to show that each identifier encapsulates a huge number of actual experiences. Perfect. Yep. All of that. People have different religions. Within the same religion, they have different levels of devoutness. They follow different subsects within their religion. Just tons of variation. We need the big categories because of where we live and it's connected to everything. But when we're at the realm of working with real, like our realm of like working with people, sometimes the big identifiers just under stress get turned into stereotypical categories instead of how I like to think of them as is like helpful for a very specific use, like census data and assessing leadership and support of blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this. So this is just to say that there's incredible diversity of experience and need in any heading, under any heading. And of course, the easiest metaphor for all things, the iceberg. Some of it is visible and people start moving to assumptions very quickly. And a lot of it, the mass of it, is the stuff that's not visible. But because of how our society is, the external can have a huge impact on treatment and access across all different kinds of systems and opportunities. As we all know, this is why this is review. I assume you have your own language for this already. So basically, we're going to talk about culture and culture used as a defense for violence or a justification for violence, because we're getting rid of this, using culture as this monolithic one thing. You like birth it out into the next generation and they follow the exact same values and norms, which anyone who's ever had a child or supported the raising of a child knows is completely not true. Within one family, the values, the thoughts, and the norms have a lot of change. So we're going to talk about culture in this way, broad, not only about race and ethnicity, but also about all kinds of other things, people's disability status, huge role in what they can access, what they can't, who they think understands their life, who they think might not. So of course, race and ethnicity are huge, but they're not only. And we're going to be considering all these kinds of things. But the point is not like that the categories are pointless, that the big categories are pointless. That's not my point at all. And it's not that like, oh, it's all just so individual. We just treat everyone the same, rainbow glasses, you know, everyone is complex. That's not, that's not what I'm saying at all, and not what AWS is saying at all, but that there's a lot of diversity, and attunement to somebody, to a survivor, means recognizing that because of this, because you can't separate it from life. Intersectionality, big word, some people love it, some people don't. Comes from a combination of academia and community. But the basic idea is just, it's not just, oh, look at all the fun cultural identities and how many pieces we have inside of us, but how that intersects with what our opportunities and treatment and rights and privileges, or lack thereof, are. So intersectionality, just for people who aren't talking about it every day, I'm always trying to just, my God, it's like make it simpler so that we can talk about it as real life people talking about real life things, not book things. I'm not against books. I love books, but you know. So this is saying that when you put those pieces together, that someone is, you know, this and that and this and that at the same time, that is lived out in life, where they have access to this, they don't have access to that. And that's been the case. Life has been intersectional since the dawn of time, definitely since the dawn of laws and norms in the US. And it's just that our language is slower to catch up, and our practice to make it more equitable is slow to catch up. Oppression was very intersectional from the very beginning. All of our earliest laws were very intersectional at exclusion. So being intersectional at the opposite takes something. I also am moving us beyond hurt people. I have to come back to us to look at us for this, because I know this isn't popular with everybody, but I'll just say that my personal hope is that we move beyond hurt people. That it has uses in some places, but that in most of our cases at AWS, the people who are hurting the people that come to AWS are of the exact same racial and ethnic background. It's usually within cultural groups. It's usually not across. So usually it is, for us, an Asian or an Arab immigrant man with limited English proficiency, and who is hurting a family of the exact same, a family that looks the same, has the same, usually has less English proficiency, has less, you know, but this idea that the whole family isn't experiencing racism, the whole family, that the survivor isn't also experiencing systemic poverty, experiencing discrimination everywhere she's going, that the kids aren't experiencing it also, is another way that I think survivors and kids' experiences get diminished or erased. So when I talk about culture, I am bearing this in mind. When I think about intersectionality, I'm bearing this in mind too. That hurt people is like a phrase that has a use and comes out of our desire within communities to acknowledge the humanity of everybody, including people who use violence, and acknowledge environmental factors of oppression. What I don't want us to do is to use those as justifications instead of things that exacerbate violence. So and also coming from my experience at Asian Women's Shelter and with a lot of our clients, a lot of the perpetrators in our cases, they are not coming out of experiences of oppression. They have been Mr. Prince Emperor since they were born. And son preference and male privilege are everywhere in every community. And so what I want us to get more confident about is to hold survivors' experiences of all of it. Survivors' experiences of racism, homo, bi, transphobia, xenophobia, etc., because most of the time they are undergoing what the person hurting them is undergoing. It's not that one person undergoes racism and the other person is forgotten. And I want us to move forward to be able to address how it is that in each of our communities and in the crossover of our communities, for us to address this bottom thing, like how is it that one type of person can experience oppression and learn entitlement, that it is their family's job or their partner's job to bear the burden of their suffering, to take their experience of anti-immigrant sentiment, to take their experience of hardship getting a job, to take their experience of discrimination in housing and workplace and everywhere, and dump it on the other people in the family, and someone else in that same social community, that other type of person learns the opposite, learns responsibility, learns burden, learns I need to make it better for the people around me. This person suffers so much. I need to forget about me. I need to forget about me and uphold them. That difference within communities is the thing that I want us to look at, that I think we have the power to change within our own communities, that I think it's oversimplified with hurt people. So that's my moment of bravery, because sometimes this drives me bananas. Okay, so here we go. Cultural differences as tools of abuse. So the question, we have two main questions. So one is just, how do people using dominance and control weaponize cultural differences and their own vulnerability to oppression? So big words, I'm sorry. Let's make them normal words. So we're very familiar with this. So this is just a brainstorm. This is the less complicated part. So in our communities, how do we see people use a cultural difference as a tool of abuse? Use someone's isolation in society because of their cultural identity as a tool. What have you seen? So we know it's not just DV isn't just like hitting. It's not just the definitions that have been in California since 1993. What do people use to control?
Hi, Orchid. Good morning, everybody. I would say immigration status for sure.
Yeah, totally. If there's a difference in that network where somebody has immigration status or somebody doesn't, or just somebody controls all the papers and they know what's going on and they can keep the other person from knowing what's going on, they can tell all kinds of lies. Yep. So they're going to use that. Finances. So people, yeah, immigration status. Definitely financial abuse is huge. Let's put in how would culture mix in with finances? How would someone use culture to make their financial abuse even more ironclad?
Almost raised my hand. It's
Do it.
on. I'm sorry. Um, I was going to say that, patriarchal societies have men controlling the finances of the household. And so that's perpetuated and used to further abuse spouses.
Totally. 100%. We all have our different spices and flavorings for patriarchy, different side dishes. That's my metaphor, is always just the main dish served around the world is patriarchy with different side dishes and spices and amount of time you keep stuff on the fire. But it's the same. This is one area that is very similar across large chunks of the world. There's only specific little areas where there's not matriarchy, but matrilineal, where at least the idea that grandma has some control over family resources is normal. Okay, totally. Anyone else? Financial control of traditional roles are applicable and the woman doesn't work. Totally. And even when the woman does work, we have, and that's like also across all community, like even, California, just to say that when California became a state, one of the things that made us unique was that we said that women, which at that time meant white women, could actually keep their own income. That was like unique and amazing. That you could keep your own income instead of having to turn it. It was owned by the head of household, and head of household had to be a man. So it's everywhere. Okay. So I want to move us to the other part quickly. So the summary of this piece is just the cultural differences are going to be used, and that's why people have made all these different types of power and control wheels to show that, hey, your environment plays a big role. DV isn't just sterile in a bottle. You learn about it in a book, and those are the tools and tactics that people use. They'll use if they feel okay in the world only by dominating somebody else. Of course, they're going to use everything that they can. So they're going to want to isolate somebody. If that person is really connected to a culturally specific faith community, of course, they're going to threaten to ruin that relationship. And it's going to work because that person is terrified of losing that. If they don't speak English, the easiest thing in the world is to isolate somebody in America who doesn't speak English. Anybody could do it. Child could do it. So these cultural differences first have the opportunity to become weaponized. And I think we talk about this a lot in queer DV discussion, but I think it's in a lot of all sort of marginalized community DV, is that it's not always someone using a power they have. It's also someone using a vulnerability or a lack of power that they have to manipulate, because the core difference is that I'm entitled to dump my crap on you versus I should be responsible to make your life easier. That difference is at play. So we see a lot of people using their vulnerability to manipulate and control. You know what it's like for me in America as a blank. Fill in the blank. You know how hard it is for me as a blank. You know how hard it, blah, you're the only one who understands. You can't, what'll happen to me if you what will happen to me if you call the police. You know what will happen to me if you tell the pastor. You know what will happen to me. That I used to be a surgeon before the war and came here. Now I'm a taxi driver. It's your job to fix it. So vulnerability can be used just as much as power, in the sense of systemic power, like I have language access. I mean, I have English language proficiency, or I have immigration status, or I'm on the lease. Okay. And we see that especially in activist community DV. Oh my God. Activist community DV just like takes all the progress we've made with analyzing oppression and like weaponizes all of it. Okay. So now let's go to cultural defenses in systems. So, and I know that we already talked about, how in the realm of finance, how somebody can be like, what's normal is that I, as the head of household, control the finances, and what's not normal is, if you want to control the finances, then all kinds of opportunity to question your gender, to say, to question your gender, or to say that you're like intent on emasculating me, whatever. Honestly, my dad had such archaic views of women and short hair that every time my mom got a haircut, she had to suffer. She would just suffer this constant badgering crap that she wanted to be a man because she cut her hair short. Just crap. So that same kind of thing, if you try to change the dynamics inside, to change the cultural dynamics, you suffer. It doesn't have to look like what a court would recognize as DV. So now let's look at what the court does do. So we're going to talk about cultural defense. Cultural defense is this controversial legal strategy that allows, for the most part, but not anymore, because now we're in this realm of coercive control and this being talked about in family court. Anytime people are getting divorced and doing custody and trying to do everything they can to have their kids with them, cultural defense is spreading out. It has old history. So controversial legal strategy that allows people to bring evidence of their quote unquote native culture into the court to either get rid of or lessen how responsible they should be. Not formally recognized, so nobody wants to recognize that it happens because it's sort of scary. So there's no regulation around it, but the cultural information shows up all the time. And California, with our immense, amazing diversity, has a reflective diversity of this in the courtroom. So most of the time they're in use, not surprisingly, in gender-based violence cases. So DV homicide used, rape cases, molestation cases, when women are killed and someone says it's because I thought she was a witch. So different ways of murder of a woman. Defending against child abuse, sometimes to explain or defend, explain suspicious looking bruises, and defend from, I guess, the same. They've been used around child marriage. They've been used a lot. And I'm just gonna touch on a few. So really quickly. So New York, 1989. Of course, we're not in 1989 anymore, but this was a fundamental case that versions of it continue to pop up today in California, in the Bay. So this was a situation where, raise your hand if you know this case. Okay, so really quickly, this is a case where, same as what I've been saying, it's intra-racial and intra-ethnicity, not crossing, but within the same. So a Chinese married straight couple in New York, from the same part of China, same many things, educational level, English proficiency, class background. They're in New York, and there's a lot of, there's DV and there's fighting about that turns into a hyper focus on the wife, the husband believing that the wife was committing adultery, and then on the day the wife says, yeah, I have been committing adultery, nobody knows anything, but that's what was said in court. And then the husband kills her. He goes into the other room, so there's purpose, like he goes into the other room, he gets a claw hammer, and he kills her. He hits her repeatedly in the head with the claw hammer and she dies. And he leaves her there for the kids to find. And then his defense attorneys present a defense of traditional Chinese values defense at the trial time, not sentencing. That's a big debate. This was at trial. And so the defense of traditional Chinese values, I'll just open it up for people who don't know the case. I'm just going to open it up especially to you first. Can you use chat box or just jump in? What does that make you think when you hear defense of traditional Chinese values being used as a defense in this murder trial? There are those too. Yep. That's a great other example of cultural defenses of murder of women and girls. Anybody else? Do you think murdering your wife with a claw hammer is traditional Chinese values? That they're not applying the usual laws because of their background. So they're definitely trying to change the application of laws because of a representation of cultural background and its influence on somebody and their behavior. Devaluing actual cultural values. Okay, battered women syndrome is not a valid defense sometimes. Yep, we're going to connect to all kinds of other environmental considerations for judging how responsible someone is for violence, including battered women syndrome. Okay, so basically, this one is really not surprising. For those of us who might lead towards cynical, it's not surprising. For those of us who have shining, glorious, sunshiny views of humanity, we might be surprised. So Pasternak, they brought in a white male academic to be the expert on Chinese family relations. He said one could expect a Chinese to react in a much more volatile, violent way to those circumstances than someone from our own society. And he was skeptical of Chinese immigrants' ability to assimilate to American ways. He opined that of all the Asians who come to this country, from my experience, the people have the hardest time adjusting to this society are Chinese. He said that any reasonable or ordinary Chinese man would have done the exact same way, have reacted the exact same way if he learned that his wife's infidelity. But he also said that, oh, it was because he was a victim here, because he was isolated from his family. In China, his family would have stopped him. So on the one hand, he said every man would have killed his wife with a claw hammer. On the other hand, he said if he had just been supported in his home country, they would have held him back from murdering his wife. So there was already, just at a very basic level, a tremendous amount of poor reasoning. Forget racism, forget all of that, just poor reasoning in his testimony. So they also said that the voices that he heard in his head, because he did admit that he heard voices, there was a mental health component to it, that the voices in his head were similar to voices of social control heard throughout Chinese society. Like, so the voices of the community, it was again unclear, government, community, but that the voices were cultural, not physiological, mental health, not they were cultural voices promoting this motivation to kill. And then as a result, because it was at trial, not just sentencing, his conviction was not murder, it was manslaughter, and he got 5 months instead of 10 to 15 years of probation. So, and then there was this reading of his cultural behavior too, like, oh, he would weep in court, he would bow. I'm like, oh my God, you're not used to bowing and you think it's like some tremendous act of whatever. Like, ugh. Anyway, first you think it's a tremendous act of respect, then you think that respect to you as an authority figure has anything to do with perpetration of DV at home, like that you think those are connected. Just like core malfunctioning of response to DV happened. And then to remember that the son found his mother in the bedroom with blood all over the place, yet he felt quite strongly that he didn't want to see his father in jail. He was also questioned about that with his father in the courtroom. So there's layers of bad practice. At the time, New York Asian Women's Center existed. It wasn't even like there was no Asian DV program to go and speak. They were, but they weren't asked to. So everything added up to this outcome. And then that's, for me, that when I first read about that case, I was like, okay, this is like my goal. My goal is for myself and everyone I ever have the chance to train at AWS, new coming volunteers. And my goal is for all of us to get more and more confident to talk about the intersection of culture and violence, because we have to, because if we leave it to other people to talk about, it's a freaking disaster. People who have good intentions, bad intentions, it doesn't matter. It's still a disaster. People who are like, we can't impose the culture of our system. Okay, please use that sentiment in the right way, not that way. But it's here in California too. There's many cases that I won't go through, but just quick, shorter visions of them. Someone convicted of habitually sexually molesting stepdaughters. Because of the degree of it, according to our law, he actually faced up to 80 years in prison. He got 24 months probation and he was remanded. He had to take English lessons. Cultural defense, that sex with minors is acceptable in Vietnam. Also completely not like literally legally not true. There's all kinds of other things. There have been, this is also California. Husband murders wife, DV, straight up DV within the same community, same national origin, same language, leaves a fake terrorist note to make it seem like it was hate violence. People are smart and trying to use what they have. And so if we don't look at culture as something that they have, which is what's happened, it didn't work. They did figure it out that this was just DV homicide, but they were misled for a while, and it could have resulted in the loss of evidence, the loss of everything. There's tons of them. That's the point of this. Tons of them. And then when I talked about this with judges, I asked them if they read about these cases. California, Judicial Council of California, they don't. So just like for us, how there's a gap between research and our practice, there's a gap for them too. Like all these opinions that are written up, all the research that amazing people in our field are doing on these cases, it doesn't get to them. So that's why I feel like our responsibility to get more adept at thinking about it and talking about it is so important, so we can bring it to them. So I'm just going to say that there's other kinds of defenses, Twinkie defense, gay panic, trans panic. This is not just DV and violence against women, but violence against queer people, trans people, usually having to do with sexual assault, rape, or murder. And then I'm going to stop the share for a second because I know we're 12 to 1, but we couldn't start till 12:15. So I wanted to ask. Yeah, I know. Do we have to end right at 12? Are people able to go like 5 minutes?
I was going to say, you keep going, and those of us who can stay behind will stay behind.
Okay. Well, I'll just open it up right now for us to talk about it. And I'm just going to put in that this is complex because we know that there are times we want cultural and environmental factors to be considered because it's important. We don't want ancient justifying of misogyny basically a violence against women and girls and children and trans people or gender nonconforming people of any age. We don't want that to be used. But articulating the difference is tricky because we do have battered women syndrome where people worked so hard to show that when someone's abused for 30 years and then are they at the moment of potentially dying and losing their life self-defense? No. But is it like any other day where murder happens? No, it's something in between. So battered women's defense is part of the scene. Black rage defense is part of the scene also, where there have been times when it's been used well, where I think all of us here would say that this is the consideration of environmental factors. It's not making an excuse for misogynist violence. So I'll leave it there and open it up for discussion about this, the ways in which we feel really clear about challenging cultural defenses of violence, especially when it's like wrong, like it's not, it's like taking a whole community and applying an unbelievably irrational violent stereotype to the entire community. So times when we feel really confident and times when we feel unsure. And yes, Pam, the defense was reaching for everything to get him off. Yep. That's what defense does. And culture, it has been an effective tool. What?
Oh, that was someone's mic. Yeah, I had to chuckle and it wasn't funny, but I just go, defense attorneys are just a special group of humans because they will reach for some of absolutely everything. And you just have to go, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, communities will collude with violence in the same way. Not the whole community, but there are always people in the community who will use culture to justify why men should be the only ones who have the passwords to the finance accounts. Why it is justified because she's like starting to think she's American and like that's not what he signed up for. Or, you know, there's all kinds of horrible ways when what the court says lines up with what some people in the community have said.
I want to apologize because I thought we were doing reproductive justice and I did see a note and I am just jet lagged. So I apologize.
Oh, don't you worry.
Yeah. But I did want to encourage everyone to, if you have any questions or any thoughts, and this was definitely a really interesting conversation because we do see a lot of cultural justifications around a lot of things, particularly within our own communities and how things kind of slip by when others are viewing groups that they're not part of.
Right.
I just wanted to add on to that you just brought up cultural considerations about children, right? So how many, who takes care of them, all that buys into money, but it also buys into expectations on whether or not it's acceptable for family friends to call my mom and tell me she saw me out the house or where I was and what I was doing. And all of that sort of circles back into how we think other people raise their children without necessarily knowing and not realizing that might be a function of someone's need for control rather than the culture as a whole.
Thank you, Taylor. Mia says, I have a client who wanted me to make the distinction between her religion and culture to the court, which I hadn't done before. It was very important to her that the court knew that her religion did not condone his behavior, even if he said the culture did. And even if he said the religion did. And even if he found some ancient strip of text in some book that, you know, nobody pays attention to the 16 million other strips of text, but suddenly that one strip of text is going to be everything in court. Thank you. Other considerations?
We have a very quiet group today.
It's a challenging, it can be a scary topic.
Yeah, but we all experience it.
Yeah.
or we've worked with someone who has.
Maybe I can.
Yeah. Becky.
Hi, thanks so much for letting me pop in. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, everyone. You know, I was actually there for that case that you were talking about with Pasternak. And he was, so that's an example. Like, and you brought that up, Orchid, about this white professor gets be the victim expert at court. I mean, so I feel like that pattern still happens, where who are we having be the expert, or, you know, subject matter expert, or those kinds of things keep happening. And I know, like, Mia, you just talking about this religion and culture in the court is like, who is, you know, who is the authority there, or being able to testify or to say, oh, in our religion, it's this or that. So I feel like that's also a layer that we have to like build those relations, or we already have those relations, but have them speak up too, or, you know, be the resource in that way.
Thank you, Becky. I've been asked to be an expert witness in several different types of, like, sometimes by the side trying, they want me to go and explain that this Asian woman survivor, the fact that she's not like weeping and crying and smiling and just being like extremely expressive with her face, that there's like some cultural environmental considerations related to why she is so expressionless, because they're worried that the court is reading her as like cold because she's not warm. And I was like, I didn't but then there was another one the other day where the judge told me like, oh, it's good that you did this training because tomorrow I'm about to have an expert witness that's going to come and tell me that all Chinese families, like, it's totally normal that they give all their property to the oldest son and all of their wealth to the oldest son. Different type of court. But in probate, like, it comes up everywhere. So like, it's totally normal that it all goes to the first son and zero to everybody else. So court, just so you know, this is how we do things. That is not this, like, so it's just like, it's not, it's like people who look like you, people who speak the same language as you, people who totally don't look like you, people, like, it's like so many people will use this simplification to support the side that they want to support. So I was like, oh my God, can I talk to that expert about freaking first son? And Rakia is here from Arab Women's Services, and we had another case that was, you know, again, where in this case, the person who was hurting, it was a very classic DV case. And oftentimes the entitlement shows up in every way. It shows up in the abuse and it shows up in court, where they feel very entitled to speak as the absolute authentic representative of culture, as if it's a teaspoonful that everybody takes, that like this much variation. And they said something like, oh, no, you know, in our religion, in our culture, it's just like, if there's a difference, you're going to try to use it. So, oh, no, in our culture, the fact that she stepped out of the house by herself was her asking for divorce. And Mona was there, our advocate was there, and the interpreters had to interpret it. The interpreters aren't supposed to talk with the litigants or the advocates on the break, but they couldn't help it. And they were like, what? Like, that is not, like, what are they saying about our people? That is not true. Cold women deserve to be abused. Yeah, we like women who are young and who smile. And who really like colorful clothes.
This expert witness conversation really is sparking something in me. How does one define an expert, and how do we contest their expertise? Because a lot of times experts are just paid to say whatever the defense or the offense wants them to say.
Yeah. And that with the coercive control bill, so with SB 1141, it's going to get trickier, because before, this cultural defense has been about literally killing somebody. I mean, and now it'll be like, oh no, you know, it would be totally normal for the daughters to go to her and the son to go to me. Or, oh no, it would be, especially the stuff around, like, if you monitor her movements, if she doesn't go anywhere by herself, you monitor her movements. The law says unreasonable restrictions, but reasonable is totally, that's the freedom of interpretation that's given. And so, even though I haven't been in the court to listen to someone, we've had a case where it didn't work, but I wasn't in the court, actually wasn't allowed in the Zoom room, but where people are trying out coercive control because it's new, and all sides are trying it out, how to say that it's not true, that it's cultural, and people who are trying to say it is true. This was control of me and my freedom and my mental peace. That is not cultural, it's coercive. Any thoughts about that? Anyone else doing any coercive control stuff, or seen it, or talked with attorneys about it outside?
Haven't come across that yet. We have a client who just went to court a couple of weeks ago. And he tried some interesting things with families serving as experts or observers of relationship, but no, we haven't had that as of yet.
Well, maybe I'll just wrap us up just by saying, like, if anybody wants to talk about this more in some other setting, I do too. And that there are other cases. There are cases where environmental considerations and cultural experiences were factored in to understand somebody's state of mind and mental health that I think are really good. Two cases that I think about are, one was a Cambodian man and one was a Black man. And in both cases, it's like the culture or environmental considerations saved their life. Like, it was capital murder. They murdered people, but it wasn't about rape and domestic violence. You have to be really careful, because it's not like, oh, if I don't care as much about the victim, then I say that use of culture is fine. But if it's misogynist violence, then I say it's not fine. You have to be really careful to not be hypocritical. But in these cases, they weren't using these broad generalizations of culture. They were using actual proven experiences. So proven experiences of how that particular prison promoted a culture of racist intimidation and violence, that was part of his mindset. How this Cambodian man, his family and his experience, not because he's Cambodian, but because of his particular growing up, like, in the killing fields of the Khmer Rouge, and what his parents' mental health was and what his mental health was, that contributed. It didn't change their conviction, but it changed their sentencing. And so, just so people know, the main debates around culture now, pre-coercive control, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like let's watch and talk about it, because it's happening right now. But pre that, the debate is like, do you get to do it in trial or is it in sentencing? Because in 1989, it was about trial, which means that his absolute murder of her was not counted as murder. Whereas in these later cases, they still committed murder. They did. They shot multiple people, they killed people. That wasn't denied, but the sentencing is reflects more understanding of their environment. So that debate of trial versus sentencing is the hot area. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you guys for signing on. And tell Pam, don't worry about it. Don't worry, you're jet lagged. You're like a little bit, you're all kinds of things. We're fine. It's just us.
That is true. I am glad that we were able to get this recorded. I think it's a very important conversation. I think a lot of these conversations we're having recently are very important, and we don't have means for us to kind of like have these conversations throughout the day of our general work. It's nice to hear from other people and hear what other people are experiencing. So thank you for being here with us and for sharing this with us. And we have two attorneys in the house, and even Mia, you know, and what she brought today in terms of her case, things for us to watch out for and to be aware of when we are advocating or talking with our clients. So thank you. And thank you, Teresa, for being here as well. And everyone. We lost our two students from, well, our instructor and our student from City College, but I think that they enjoyed it. It was just time for them to get back to work. So
Yeah.
We appreciate you all being here, and we look forward to having you all here next month. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.
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 Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, I came late, but the link
It's
wasn't
okay, Raquel.
working.
Oh,
I tried,
the
and
link
I
is mea
sent message
culpa.
to Muna. Yeah.
Yeah, we will get on top of this. Someone copied the old barcode onto the new flyer, so we are going to get that corrected yesterday. But thank you so much
Okay.
for coming.
Hopefully next month I will be
We
on
hope
time.
so. Great.
Okay.
Take
Thank you.
care. Thank
Bye.
you. Taylor, have you gotten to
Yes.
the meeting?
Yes.
Yes, you have. I just want to let you know, give you a little heads up. Jada asked to meet with us at 4:00, and she said she wanted to talk to you about, I guess, work and things that are going on. So I told her, I said, I spoke to you and asked you to take more charge over what she's doing, things that she's reporting back. And I again reconvened that her job is outreach. She should be contacting housing. She should be contacting stores, local stores in Black areas. It's important. I said, and I did tell her, I said, I had this conversation with Jafria before she recommended you for this job. It's important to be outgoing, to be a go-getter, and to get that trap down. And so I don't know what else she said something
Yeah.
about being
And I
respectful.
do want to say in context, like, I think at least today, like the question I had asked is I was like, hey, were you able to send just being more direct about being like, it's not my project, right? So specifically, like when she asked for help with the graphic, I was like, email Dominic. She's like, here's the email. And then today being like, hey, I asked you to write that draft of the email for Crucial Conversations on Monday. Did you send it? And she's like, no. And I'm like, can you CC me on it? And it's not just because like I need proof that you did it. It's because I'm trying to credit you as outreach. And when I send it to my contacts, I forward it with just a little message on top, right? Because you are outreach. And that was something I messaged her today. As I was like, hey, what link was on that thing you just sent out? And I think obviously we're texting and we're in message and it came across as kind of short, but also like that wasn't my intention.
I'm not even worried about it. I'm putting it back on her. Like I said, I haven't seen a work log since January. She said, oh, I did it up to February, but it's March.
And I told her last week, before she went on vacation on Wednesday, I told her Monday and I told her Wednesday that the Cal OES and the work log were there. And I didn't feel like I was being repeated, but I only mentioned it twice. And what I said is like, you're going on vacation. She wants it Friday. You didn't explicitly give us a deadline, but I was trying to like not have her blindsided if she wasn't aware she was still supposed to be doing it when she met with you and or Jay.
But it's been an ongoing thing since we started them back in October.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make it a directive where it's like every week, email your work log and those and put it on our calendars. Oh my God, I'm sorry, spasm. Put it on our calendars for those god awful functional timesheets.
Yeah. I'm about to spend a solid morning with some caffeine doing that. And it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
Maybe.
with
She's like, well, the
the
formula's
work
not
log,
fixed.
I
I said,
didn't mean
whether
it
the
to be.
formula. No, and I'm telling you, I don't want you to come off and be surprised. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. I want you to be aware that I am not worried about it.
And I don't want to I asked for the housing thing twice last week and then didn't whatever. And I guess I could have written in an email and CC'd you, but I just thought per our discussion, it's something I'm asked for before. It's something I'm waiting on. And I did phrase it just as hey, do you have housing? Do you know if any of them have teen specific housing or teen programs? I was and she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I didn't know. And you probably won't know unless you call. Right. And if I had a list, I could do that calling myself.
To her specifically today, I said, I said, Jay is going to be meeting with you and Taylor because I can't micromanage. I said, I can't. I have grants. I have reports for grants. I have upcoming New Year grants. And people kind of hear me go, grants is that's how we get paid.
Oh, and Jay said that there's a new grant and it's due at the end of March.
He sent it to me, so I'm going to look at it, but I'm not sure if it's something we're going to do in the middle of another grant. So it's capacity as well. But yeah,
I was just curious about, especially since we've attracted college students for research, if we could balance off some of that, paying them more equitably there, and then we could work on the high schoolers with otherwise. But
right, and then that brings up another issue. In our grant, I don't think Nancy gives a crap as long as there's someone under the age of 24.
Yeah,
she is aware that it's difficult to get kids to engage and be involved. But we did kind of pitch this out as a younger group of students. So
then we have.
Yeah. So we will have that as a conversation if we have problems with our next cycle of getting younger students.
Yeah. And directing that out, as I have 3 programs that circle back to me about having me pop in to do a workshop or activity with them. And they all have kids in that age group that we want.
Okay.
So that's 3rd Street. That's Booker T. And there's one other. And so it may be that if kids have heard of us before, they're easier to come in. And it could be that our outreach for them is directed as one time. And we're hoping to bring them in when they're 17, 18.
Right.
So I'll have to look at.
Just thinking off the top of my head, we should contact Diane, now that you've met her, Diane at 100% College Prep, even if it's just having a conversation about, are you being exposed or experiencing DV?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Because those kids they won't have time to do any additional work unless they're not in her summer program, because she keep their butts busy. But they might know friends, and definitely just talking about DV.
Yeah, and I appreciate that for when you're talking about how busy they are, because that was something I saw when I talked to Erica from Asian Women's Shelter about how her younger groups are 4 or 5 Sundays for 2 hours apiece because their parents have them scheduled to be busy, so that they're learning and they're happy and they're not in trouble. And so that finding additional programming.
Not willing to forego your Sundays. That's just not a formula that I wish to create. I think life balance is important. I'm not willing to set up that type of a dynamic. If it was one Sunday, maybe where you can take a Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and make an early weekend, but every Sunday, no.
We'll see for a short program, but for right now, I am happy as we're going and we're just building it. I'm really excited that the HRC young man texted me and was like, I'm so sorry I wasn't able to join today. Crucial conversations. We had an all hands on deck. So I'd love to check in with you and double check that the meeting. That the application just says rolling deadline, and I'm just going to send it to him.
And even if it doesn't, tell them to apply anyway. I think I lifted where you couldn't apply. So
yeah.
But you have a meeting, and I need to get dressed for a meeting because I'm meeting with one of the DA staff. So my Black Women Revolt t-shirt probably won't be good unless I move into a position where I can make sure that they don't see I have a nightgown under it. So I have to.
That's fair. Yeah. And then the youth DV the youth community violence prevention coordinator from YCD is the one who called me this morning. So I guess they have a specific situation he had questions about, and he didn't want to talk because they're in school. but it sounds like it's possibly for a question about someone specific that needs support and is 18 and is finishing their last year of high school. So I was going to meet with him about that and about putting up the posters we're developing to go up in Booker T in their summer programming as well.
Perfect. And
but
that's
I will meet you at 4. Have you sorry?
Something to think about for the future. Do we need to do satellite, like meeting, if it's Booker T kids, meeting with Booker T once a week or something?
Yeah. And that makes sense, I think, is to just know that I'm there, and then what checks would we need for that?
Hold on just a second. I gotta go. I will see you at 4 on Zoom.
Yes. And you sent the link?
Yes.
Okay. Brilliant.
Okay. Thanks, Taylor.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.